In the quiet neighborhood of Mar Vista, Los Angeles, where palm trees sway lazily in the breeze and the distant hum of traffic never truly fades, there is a house that no real estate agent can keep occupied for long. It's not because of its history, though history lingers in every corner, but because of what the new owners have come to suspect. Something else lingers, too. Michael and Danielle Foster had been searching for a home in Los Angeles for nearly a year before they stumbled upon the property. It was a modern, single-story house with an open floor plan, natural light flooding through the glass doors, and a backyard that felt like a private retreat. The price was shockingly low for the area, low enough to make Michael, a skeptical but budget-conscious screenwriter, question what was wrong with it. The real estate agent had hesitated when they asked about its history. It was owned by the actress and Heche, she admitted. There was an accident nearby. Michael had heard about the fiery crash that took Heche's life. It had happened just a few blocks from the house, but the home itself had been untouched by the flames. People can be superstitious, the agent said, forcing a smile. But if that doesn't bother you, it's a great deal. Danielle, a pragmatic architect with a love for mid-century aesthetics, had already fallen for the clean lines and modern feel of the place. We'd be stupid to pass this up, she told Michael. And so, despite the gnawing doubt in the back of his mind, they signed the papers and moved in. First, it was little things. The sensation of movement in the peripheral vision, like someone walking just out of sight. The way the temperature would drop suddenly in the living room, no matter how high they set the thermostat. Then, there were the noises. Not just the creaks and groans of an old house settling, but specific sounds. Late at night, Danielle would hear the unmistakable clicking of high heels pacing the hallway. Michael once woke up to the sound of a muffled voice coming from the backyard. When he checked, there was no one there. They told themselves it was just the adjustment period. New houses always felt unfamiliar at first. But then, the lights started flickering, not in random, intermittent bursts, but in distinct patterns. Michael, growing uneasy, started recording them. When he played the footage back, he swore he could hear something underneath the static of the audio. A woman's voice, barely audible. One night, as Danielle was brushing her teeth, she caught her own reflection moving out of sync in the mirror. She dropped the toothbrush in shock and stepped back. The moment passed, but the unease remained. The final straw came when Danielle found the hallway light on in the middle of the night. She was sure she had turned it off. As she reached for the switch, a whisper filled her ear, close enough that she could feel the breath on her skin. "Get out!" she screamed, waking Michael. He ran to her side, but the hallway was empty. That night, they both slept or tried to sleep with every light in the house on. A week later, they packed their bags and checked into a hotel, deciding they would return only in daylight. Michael spent hours researching Heche's life, reading interviews, watching old footage. The more he learned, the more he felt that whatever was in that house wasn't malicious, just lost. A presence trapped between worlds. They tried to sell the property, but buyers sensed something was off. Even when it did sell, the next owners didn't stay long. Over time, the house developed a reputation, whispered about in the neighborhood. Some say they still see movement behind the glass doors at night. Others claim to hear laughter, quick, breathy, almost theatrical, before it fades into silence. And so the house stands, beautiful, empty, waiting. The house sat under the weight of the California sun, its clean white facade unbothered by the dust of time. From the street, it looked untouched, pristine, like something pulled from the glossy pages of an architecture magazine. But inside, the air never settled. It moved, stretched, twisted, almost as if it breathed. Michael and Danielle Foster returned one morning to gather a few belongings. The hotel room they had fled to was comfortable enough, but neither of them could shake the feeling that leaving the house like that abruptly, fearfully, had only deepened whatever had rooted itself within its walls. Danielle had always been the rational one, a woman of straight lines and solid angles, someone who believed in measurements, in logic, in the reassuring permanence of concrete and steel. But as she stepped inside, something pulled at the edge of her mind, a feeling just beneath the surface of her thoughts, like a faint whisper she couldn't quite catch. The air inside was heavy, still carrying the scent of their old life, faint traces of Michael's coffee, the lingering musk of Danielle's perfume clinging to the fabric of the sofa. The silence was thick, pressing, stretching around them like an unseen presence that had been waiting for their return. "I just want to grab my laptop," Michael said. Though his voice was quieter than usual, it barely cut through the hush of the house. Danielle nodded, stepping toward the kitchen. The morning light filtered through the large windows, but even in the brightness, she felt the same pressure in the air, the sensation of being watched. She ran her fingers along the edge of the marble countertop, grounding herself in the smoothness, the cool solidity of the surface. It was real, tangible, not like the weightless unease pressing at her spine. Then, something shifted. A sound soft, distant, but unmistakable. A whisper. She turned sharply, her breath catching in her throat. The hallway leading to their bedroom yawned before her, stretching into shadow. She stared into it, waiting. Her pulse drummed against her ribs, the beat thick and heavy. Nothing. And yet, the feeling persisted. She could still hear it just beyond reach. A voice, not quite formed, slipping between the spaces of the house, like it was trying to push through, to be heard. Michael returned from the bedroom, laptop in hand, his expression tense. "Let's go," he said, barely pausing as he walked past her. She didn't argue. As they stepped outside, locking the door behind them, Danielle felt something shift again, like a presence retreating, slipping back into the bones of the house, waiting. And for the first time, she wondered, was it them who had been intruding all along? Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The hotel room felt smaller than before. Maybe it was the clutter, half-zipped suitcases, chargers tangled on the nightstand, the faint smell of takeout settling into the fabric of the curtains. Or maybe it was something else, something that had followed them, just beyond their senses, an invisible thread stretching between them and the house they had abandoned. Danielle lay awake that night, staring at the uneven texture of the ceiling. Her body was exhausted, her limbs heavy, but sleep refused to take her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hallway again, the stretch of darkness, the feeling of something waiting just beyond the reach of her vision. She turned onto her side, watching Michael's back rise and fall with the rhythm of his breath. He had fallen asleep quickly, but even in unconsciousness, there was tension in his shoulders, like his body was still bracing for something unseen. The room was too quiet. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, needing the comfort of the screen's glow, the distraction of meaningless scrolling. But as she lifted it, the screen flickered just for a second, barely enough to register. A momentary glitch. Her stomach clenched. A trick of the light, she told herself. A moment of paranoia. But then it happened again. A brief distortion, the text on the screen shifting, warping as if something was pressing through, trying to manifest. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. Danielle's fingers trembled as she locked the phone, placing it face down on the nightstand. She didn't dare look at it again. She turned back toward Michael, curling into herself, her breath coming slower, shallower. "It's just in your head." She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to convince herself. But deep down, she knew. They had left the house. But whatever was inside it had not let them go. The next morning, the city felt wrong. Los Angeles had always carried a certain weight, a haze of heat pressing against its streets, the distant hum of traffic, the restless energy of people moving in 100 different directions at once. But as Danielle stepped outside the hotel lobby, the air felt thicker, the light sharper, like the world had shifted a fraction of a degree off its axis. She didn't tell Michael. He was already on edge, his hands wrapped too tightly around his coffee cup, his eyes shadowed from a night of uneasy sleep. They sat in silence at a cafe near the hotel, the smell of burnt espresso curling in the air between them. Neither of them touched their food. Danielle stirred her coffee absently, the spoon clicking against porcelain in an unsteady rhythm. She wanted to tell him about the phone, about the way the screen had twitched, about the feeling of something pressing through the barrier of glass and pixels. But what would she say? That she was losing her grip? That even here, outside of the house, the sense of watching had not faded? Michael cleared his throat. "I've been thinking." His voice was low, careful. "About the house." Danielle tensed, waiting. "We need to go back." Her fingers tightened around the spoon. "No." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "We can't just leave it like this. I don't know what's happening, but if we keep running from it, it's only going to get worse." "Worse?" Her voice came sharper than she intended. "Michael, what do you think is happening? Do you think—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. Asterisk, "do you actually believe in this?" Asterisk. His expression flickered, uncertain. "I don't know what I believe," he admitted. "But I do know that I feel different. We feel different. Ever since we left." Danielle exhaled slowly, forcing herself to stay grounded. The ceramic warmth of the coffee cup, the weight of her own body pressing into the wooden chair. Things she could touch. Things she could control. "We go back," Michael said carefully. "Just to see. To face it." She wanted to tell him it was a bad idea. That something inside her knew deep in the pit of her stomach, in the marrow of her bones, that going back was exactly what it wanted. But she didn't say anything, because part of her knew he was right, because part of her knew that if they didn't go back, it would come to them instead. The drive back to Mar Vista was suffocating. The streets were the same, lined with sun-bleached palm trees, the afternoon light bouncing off the glass windows of passing cars, but something felt off. The city moved around them as it always did, but Danielle couldn't shake the sensation that they were disconnected from it, as if the world had subtly realigned itself, pushing them toward an inevitable destination. Michael drove in silence, both hands gripping the wheel. His jaw was tight, his profile rigid. He hadn't spoken much since they left the cafe, and Danielle hadn't forced the conversation. She was too busy listening. To the silence. To the spaces between the sounds of traffic. To the strange emptiness pressing against the edges of her awareness. As they turned onto their street, the house emerged from behind the trees, standing pristine beneath the clear sky. From the outside, nothing had changed. The hedges were neatly trimmed. The windows reflected the world like darkened mirrors, and the front door, closed, undisturbed, seemed to mock them with its ordinary stillness. But as soon as Danielle stepped out of the car, the weight returned. A pressure, thick and unmoving, settled around her like a second skin. The air smelled different here, emptier, as if it had been undisturbed for centuries instead of just days. Michael exhaled, the sound sharp in the quiet. "Let's just go in and see." She didn't answer. The house key felt wrong in her hand. Too heavy, too cold. As she pushed the door open, the scent of their old life greeted her, faint traces of their detergent, the dry remnants of the vanilla candle she had burned in the kitchen. Everything was just as they had left it, but the air inside was motionless, expectant. They stepped inside together. Danielle's breath caught in her throat. The house was silent, but not in the way an empty house should be. It was a different kind of quiet, one that listened. Michael cleared his throat, forcing an air of normalcy. "See." His voice was too loud. "It's just a house." Danielle didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the hallway. The same hallway where she had heard the whisper. The same hallway where the light had flickered on its own. The shadows there were wrong. Not darker, not longer, just wrong. She took a slow step forward, her fingers brushing the wall as if needing to confirm it was real. The texture of the paint was familiar beneath her touch. But beneath that, something else. A vibration. Faint, almost imperceptible, like something moving beneath the skin of the house. Her stomach tightened. Behind her, Michael was saying something, but the words were muffled, distant, because now she could hear it. A sound from deep within the house. A slow, deliberate tapping. Not random. Rhythmic. Steady. A message knocking from the inside out. Her fingers curled against the wall. She knew they had made a mistake coming back. But it was too late. The house had already let them in. And this time it would not let them go. The knocking did not stop. It was soft at first, almost delicate, a distant, methodical rhythm that seemed to rise from the bones of the house itself. Not coming from the walls, not from the ceiling. It was deeper, beneath them, Inside them, Danielle's pulse pounded in her throat. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Michael had gone still beside her. His head tilted slightly, his brow furrowed. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, a slow nod. "Yeah." The word was quiet, careful. Neither of them moved. The house felt tighter around them now, as if the walls had inched closer while they weren't looking. The open floor plan, once airy and modern, now felt like a trap too exposed, too vast, yet simultaneously suffocating. Then the knocking changed. The rhythm faltered just slightly, barely noticeable, but Danielle felt the shift in her bones. It was no longer random, no longer just knocking. It was forming words. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. The pattern, subtle, uneven, wasn't meaningless. It had intent. Something was trying to communicate. Michael took a hesitant step forward, and the wooden floor beneath him groaned too loudly. The sound rang out like a gunshot in the heavy silence, and the knocking stopped. Danielle's stomach twisted. The silence that followed wasn't absence. It was anticipation. Then, a new sound. A whisper. It wasn't like before. Not an echo in the walls. Not the sensation of something just beyond her hearing. This time it was close. "Help me." The voice came from the hallway. Low. Hoarse. A woman's voice. Danielle's breath locked in her lungs. Michael turned his head, slowly, his eyes meeting hers. He had heard it too. The hallway stretched before them, its end swallowed in shadows that had no right to exist in the daylight. The air seemed to pulse, thick with something unseen. Then a flicker, a movement in the dark. A shape, a presence standing at the far end of the hall. Danielle's chest tightened. The figure was barely visible, more suggestion than form. A distortion in the air, like heat shimmering off pavement. It didn't move, but it was watching. She could feel it. Michael took an unsteady step back. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "Danielle." Then the hallway light flickered and went out. The house swallowed them in darkness. The darkness was not empty. It pressed against them thick, suffocating, swallowing the hallway, erasing the edges of the room. The last image burned into Danielle's mind was the shape standing at the end of the corridor, its form barely visible, shifting like a ripple in the air. Now she couldn't see it, but she felt it. A silence stretched between them, deep and unnatural. Not the kind that simply follows a sudden blackout, not the absence of sound, but a deliberate, waiting quiet. The kind that suggested they were not alone. Danielle's breath came in slow, shallow gasps. Beside her, she could hear Michael's breathing, too quicker, uneven. She reached for him, fingers brushing his wrist, and she could feel the tension in his muscles, the way his body was poised to flee. A floorboard creaked. Not beneath them. Ahead. Danielle's hand tightened around Michael's. They were both frozen, unwilling to move, unwilling to confirm what they already knew. Something was still there. Then the whisper returned. "Help me." Soft, broken, right in front of them. Danielle's chest tightened. Her entire body tensed, but she forced herself to speak, barely a breath, barely a sound. "Who are you?" For a moment, nothing. Then another whisper. "I didn't mean to die." A sharp, electric terror shot through Danielle's limbs. She wanted to turn, to run, to tear herself away from the oppressive darkness. But something in the voice, something in the rawness of it held her in place. Michael exhaled, his breath shaky. "Anne." His voice was barely above a whisper, a beat of silence. And then, the house exhaled. It was the only way Danielle could describe it. The air shifted, the silence moved, as if something unseen had just taken a breath, drawn itself inward. And then the shadows shifted. Michael stumbled backward, pulling Danielle with him. Their bodies collided with the edge of the kitchen counter. A sharp jolt of reality in a space that no longer felt real. The shape at the end of the hallway, it was closer now. No footsteps, no sound of movement, but it had moved. Danielle's pulse pounded in her ears. "What do you want?" she asked, barely recognizing her own voice. The shape flickered just for a moment, just enough for Danielle to see something within it. A woman, barefoot, her clothes burned, her body distorted. But her face, no, not a face, a void, dark, empty, shifting like smoke. The kitchen light flickered. Danielle felt something brush against her skin. Not a hand, not a touch, just the sensation of something unseen moving past her, around her, through her. The air turned cold. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The darkness lifted. The overhead lights flickered back to life, casting the house back into harsh, normal brightness. Danielle blinked rapidly, her breath still shallow. The hallway was empty, the air still, but the presence it hadn't left. She could feel it, watching, waiting. Michael swallowed hard. "We can't stay here." Danielle nodded, her fingers still shaking. "No." They left without packing, without closing the doors, without looking back. As they stepped outside, the sky was exactly as it had been when they arrived, bright, blue, cloudless. As if nothing had happened. As if the house behind them was just another home in a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood. But as Danielle climbed into the car, something made her pause. The reflection in the rearview mirror. The house stood behind them, unchanged. But in the second-story window, a figure, watching, waiting. And as Michael turned the key in the ignition, Danielle swore just for a moment she saw the reflection smile. Then the engine roared to life, and they drove away, leaving the house and whatever still lingered inside behind. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew. They had left, but it would never let them go. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.